She's a woman who appeared to love the party life, the fast life.
I think she had a real good way of hiding things, being very discreet with things, very manipulative, plotting the grandmas, her mom and the grandma that was involved with the kids against each other so they wouldn't speak with one another. She was a mastermind. She thought she had control of everybody, is what I'm seeing now.
Now, this mom could soon be charged with murder in connection to her missing daughter. And for the first time, we're learning what police reportedly believe happened to Ava Gonzales, a little girl who hasn't been seen since she was a toddler a decade ago. We're on the case presented by Law&Crime. I'm Chris Stewart. Hey guys, real quick before we hop into this episode of On the Case, I want to talk about our partner and sponsor, Morgan & Morgan, America's largest personal injury law firm. They're a firm of more than 1,000 attorneys who have recovered $25 billion from more than 500,000 clients. In the past few months alone, a client in Florida received $12 million when insurance offered just $350,000. In Pennsylvania, another client was awarded $26 million. That is 40 times the insurer's offer. Morgan & Morgan makes it easy to fight for what you deserve. You can even start a claim from your phone. So if you're injured, you can start a claim at forthepeople.com/OTC. You can click the link below or scan the QR code on your screen. Where is Ava Gonzales, a little girl who no one knew was missing until her mom was arrested last spring in a terrible case of alleged child abuse? And when I say this girl has been missing, we are talking about a girl who was last seen when she was just 2 years old. And that last sighting, according to police, was 2017. Now, we've been covering this story for months, since last spring when Virginia Gonzales was first arrested. And there are layers to this story. In the story, from the police perspective, from what we can see, it's really made up of two parts. Because you have a case of alleged abuse of a young girl who police say was found trapped in a bedroom closet. Then you have another girl, another daughter of Virginia Gonzales, who has been missing for roughly a decade. She hasn't been seen since she was just 2 years old. And the person who police say is the constant in these two cases is the mother of those girls, Virginia Gonzales. Now, the allegations in this case, they are terrible. They're horrific. They are so difficult to comprehend. But it's important to note that we are still talking about allegations here. And we know that Virginia Gonzales appears ready to argue that she is innocent, at least when it comes to the case of her daughter, who was found in a closet in an apartment in Austin, Texas in spring of 2025. And that little girl, according to police, was around 7 years old, and she weighed just 29 pounds. 7 years old. That's the weight of a toddler. Now, she was allegedly malnourished. She was starving to the point where she has permanent brain damage. Now, police say that little girl was in the care of her mom, Virginia Gonzales. And Virginia has been in custody since the spring of last year. Now, inside the apartment, police say there were 6 other kids, reportedly between the ages of 2 and 14. And police say that they are all the children of Virginia Gonzales. And Gonzales gave the little girl who was trapped in the closet, allegedly, just a corn dog and half a cup of water a day. That's it. Now, the other children in the apartment told police that Virginia allegedly targeted that young 7-year-old girl because, quote, she was always getting into stuff. The children allegedly said the 7-year-old girl had issues controlling her bladder, and that is why her own mom, Virginia Gonzales, ordered her to be locked in the closet. Now, in that case, Virginia Gonzales is facing 3 child abuse charges, and she's slated to go on trial on January 26th. But her attorney is now saying that may not happen because of a major new development in this case that we're going to talk about in just a moment. Now, that new development has to do with the shocking development that police say they have come across in their investigation when it comes to another daughter of Virginia Gonzales. And this is a girl who has been missing since 2017, and police only found out that Ava Gonzales was missing since 2017 when they first started investigating Virginia Gonzales because of her other daughter who was allegedly found trapped in that closet. Now, at first, it appears that police thought that Virginia had 7 children, those kids that were in the apartment unit. But then, as they investigated, they say they discovered that Virginia allegedly had an 8th child, and that child was missing, and that girl had been missing for years. And that girl's name is Ava Marie Gonzales. This is an image of what she might look like today. The truth is, no one has a picture of Ava since roughly 2017. So this is generated in hopes that someone could come across this girl and recognize that she is the one who had been missing for so many years. Police say the last time that Ava was confirmed to be seen was when she was just 2 years old. And as I said, 2017, December of 2017, police say.
During the investigation, police discovered that there was an 8th child who was not found inside the home. The missing 9-year-old child was identified as Ava Marie Gonzales. Missing persons detectives determined that Ava was last seen in December 2017 when she was 2 years old and in the custody of her mother, Virginia Marie Gonzales. Virginia Gonzales was arrested on April 24th, 2025 for injury to a child, serious vital injury, for the injuries sustained by her 7-year-old child. Austin Police Department's missing person detectives are seriously concerned about Ava's welfare, given the circumstances in which Ava's 7-year-old sibling was found.
Now, according to police, Ava was never reported missing. And just to add to that, there are no records of any of the Gonzales children ever being in school. So there's nothing for schools to track or report. Now, according to court records that were obtained by the local TV station in Austin, KXAN, there are several conflicting stories about what may have happened to Ava Marie Gonzales. Court records show that Gonzales's firstborn son, who's now roughly 14 years old, told detectives that Ava was given to a family when she was about 3. Now, I'll have more on his story in just a moment because it really opens the door to some very, very scary possibilities that police may believe happened in this case. Court records also state, according to KXAN, that Child Protective Services, who did have contact with the family, they were told in November 2023 that Ava had moved in with her father. And there's a document that apparently was signed by one of the grandmothers of Gonzales's children. But when that grandmother was questioned, she said that it wasn't her signature on that document, and the phone number on the document wasn't hers either. And according to these documents from KXAN, police have confirmed that that is the case, that that was not her signature and it wasn't her phone number. Then police say they spoke to a former boyfriend of Virginia Gonzales, and this man is the father of one of her children. Now, he told police, reportedly, that Gonzales had told him that Ava was actually her sister's child and that Ava was living with her aunt and uncle. And that ex-boyfriend also told police that Gonzales called Ava a, quote, crack baby who was born premature and was sickly, who had health problems and looked malnourished. But police note that hospital records show that Ava was born full term at a healthy weight of 6 pounds with no complications. Now, police also say they got in touch with Ava's alleged father. He lives in Mexico, and he told investigators that Gonzales told him that Ava was living with another family in San Antonio, and he said he never had custody of his daughter, Ava Gonzales. Now, it appears that there is only one witness who has spoken to police about what may have happened to Ava, and it appears to be Virginia Gonzales' now 14-year-old brother, who would have been around 6 at the time that Ava was last seen. And he told investigators in a forensic interview, according to KXAN, when he was 6 years old, he was in a motel with apparently his family, including Ava, and he heard from a motel bathroom screaming, quote, really bad. He claims that he saw his mom violently assaulting Ava in the bathtub with the water running. And he says when the water turned off, the screaming stopped. He then says that he saw his mom put clothes on Ava and put her in a car seat. And he says that he thought that Ava was sleeping. Now, he claims that his mom said that Ava was going to live with a new mom and dad. He says he never saw his sister again. And he noted that after that happened, that his mom was happy, like a totally new person. Now, according to these documents, again, obtained by KXAN TV, police believe that Ava died on or around January 2nd, 2018, and they believe that she was killed by her mom, Virginia Gonzales. Now, at the time of this recording, Virginia Gonzales has not been charged in connection to Ava Marie Gonzales. Now, intentionally causing a death of a child under 10, it's important to note that is a capital crime in the state of Texas. Now, before we get to how Gonzales's attorney is responding to this new information that's in the news, I want to talk about a simple but massive question, and it's probably one that you're asking yourself when you think about a case of a girl who had been missing for so long and no one seemed to know where she went, whether it's family, whether it's school, whether it's CPS. The big question being, how does this happen? Of course, all of this is just alleged at this point. But if what's being alleged is true, how does this happen that a girl can just vanish like this and no one seems to have been looking for her? I spoke with a woman who says that she considers herself now a former friend of Virginia Gonzales. And she says that the videos you're looking at here, they're from 2024, and they show Gonzales living a fast lifestyle and partying.
I think she had a real good way of hiding things, being very discreet with things, very manipulative, plotting the grandmas, her mom and the grandma that was involved with the kids against each other so they wouldn't speak with one another. She was a mastermind. She thought she had control of everybody is what I'm seeing now.
Now, the videos that we have show Gonzales reportedly drinking and smoking out at clubs and bars. And to confirm that this was Gonzales in these videos, you can see that in this one, which shows her taking what looks to be a shot on a boat, as you zoom in, you can see on her neck there is a tattoo of a heart, which matches the tattoo that you can see here in her booking photo. So Virginia, to this point, is only facing charges in connection to the alleged child abuse case, the case where her daughter was allegedly found trapped, malnourished, severely malnourished in a bedroom closet in an apartment in Austin, Texas. But could that soon change and take this case to a new level based off what we are hearing when it comes to this search warrant that police have put forward alleging that Ava Marie Gonzales died in 2018, and even alleging that it was at the hands of Virginia Gonzales. So this is what we know. Over the summer, as far as where this case has gone, prosecutors boosted Gonzales's bond from $75,000 to $250,000, according to KXAN. And the DA alleges that Gonzales had, quote, ties to human smuggling, ties to Mexico. Now, that is a hint of, at that point, what may have happened to Ava. Now, the TV station also reports in the filing that Gonzales had a disturbing phone call with another inmate in jail. Quote, defendant expresses her concern that they are going to lock her up. And then the inmate that she was speaking to responded with, for what? The baby? Allegedly talking about missing Ava Marie Gonzales. Now, according to KXAN, Gonzales rejected a plea deal in November of 2025. Prosecutors reportedly offered her 40 years in exchange for a guilty plea on the charge of felony injury to a child. And not only did Gonzales say no deal, her attorney called the offer, quote, utterly absurd. So now police have filed this search warrant that authorizes detectives to obtain new evidence in connection to Ava Marie Gonzales. And KXAN is reporting that Austin police have now expanded the child abuse investigation into a possible capital murder case. So I did reach out to Virginia Gonzales's attorney for comment on this new warrant and the details that appear to accuse his client of murdering her own child. We are still waiting to get a statement from him at the time of this recording, but he did release a statement to local media in Austin. And the attorney called the timing of this information coming to light, this search warrant, quote, suspicious because it does come roughly 2 weeks before Gonzales's jury trial on the child abuse charges is slated to begin. And now he says, the attorney, that he's planning to file a continuance and change of venue. He went on to say, quote, the state's case as indicted is weak. It appears the facts are being stretched to fit a narrative intended to convict my client of a higher charge. Gonzales's attorney, J. Gabriel Hernandez, told KXAN. Now, he goes on to say, quote, by seeking this warrant at this time, they are effectively poisoning the jury pool by reintroducing these allegations into the news cycle just before the January 26th trial date. This creates an unfair bias and prejudice against my client, making it nearly impossible to select an impartial jury. To protect my client's constitutional rights, we have no choice but to seek a continuance and a change of venue. Joining us now to talk more about this case from Texas is trial attorney Bridget Williams. It's always great to have you on Law and Crime. This story is just, we've been following it since April of last year, and it's just so horrific, each detail that comes out. And now for the first time, we're getting an idea of what police reportedly think may have happened to Ava Gonzales. And it really appears, at least at this point, to hinge on the testimony potentially of her own son, who's roughly 14, talking about what just a horrific scene that he says that he saw play out at this motel when he was 6 years old. How strong of a case, though, if that's, and it's an incredibly sad and detailed story, but can you bring a murder charge against someone just based off that boy's testimony alone?
The thing is, with a murder case, we start back with the fact that this is something the child hasn't been seen in over 7-8 years now. A murder case in the state of Texas, and I think in most states, does not have a statute of limitations on it. So the state can bring a charge or can investigate a case 5 years, 10 years, 30 years later, if they so choose. So the state is investigating the case at this time, and the testimony of an older sibling can in fact be enough for the state to take a look into it. The young lady is not being charged with the offense yet because they're still investigating it. And I think it's actually something that needs to be investigated if this child brings forth this type of testimony. So it's definitely enough for the state to start investigating it.
And this story getting into the news, she's supposed to, on this, child abuse case that she's accused of and has been, she's been in jail since April of last year. It does come roughly 2 weeks, less than that, before she's expected to have a jury trial. And so here's this major news story in Austin, Texas, and it's talking about what she may or may not have done to her daughter, who has been missing since 2017, roughly 2018. I can see why her attorney would say that this is something that would be a bit of a challenge. How strong of an argument is there that the jury trial needs to be pushed back because this is tainting a jury pool?
In some ways, I do agree with defense counsel that can be suspicious that the state is bringing this investigation to light now, and now it's all over multiple news outlets 2 weeks before a jury trial is supposed to begin. With that being said, the defense counsel is saying, well, everyone in the county now is being informed that my client now is being investigated for a murder case. Despite if the judge tells the jury to put that out of their mind and only focus on the evidence that's being presented here, and that is it, it's going to be really difficult for several people who are chosen for the jury to put that completely out of their mind. And so defense counsel is saying, well, let's at least push it back until this investigation is possibly over, or change venues, which just means, can we move it to another county where it hasn't been blasted all over the news everywhere and every person has been informed about this investigation. This young lady is not charged. She hasn't been convicted of murder. And so it will be completely up to the judge to determine if this information can even be brought into evidence for the trial of the injury to a child case.
And oftentimes we'll hear defense attorneys make that argument that it's just, this is a jury pool where they know who this woman is and they know what she's accused of. Police held a news conference when she was arrested talking about how her daughter hadn't been seen for roughly a decade. And yet, even though there's that publicity argument that we see sometimes, it seems like the change of venue, the continuances, like they're not often granted. Like, what's the bar of publicity for a judge to say, yes, this is something where it's just unfair to this defendant? Because even before this new development came out, I mean, there was a lot of information about Virginia Gonzales. We've covered it. A lot of true crime shows have covered it. The news in Texas has covered it. So it's just kind of another layer to this story, but it's not like people are now saying, wait a second here, there's something that happened to her daughter years ago, because police have been talking about it since she was arrested in April of last year.
Yeah, that's a great point. The bar for that is, will this defendant be able to get a fair and unbiased trial? That's what the judge has to make the determination on. With the light of this information that's been presented and that's been exposed to the public now, everyone in this county, will them having that information now present a unfair trial base for this particular defendant? That's what the judge has to determine. And any good defense attorney is going to bring it up, even if the chances of them being denied is, I don't know, more than 50%. It's still something that a good defense attorney is going to bring up, because, again, everyone in the county knows about this, even if the judge says, throw that away from your minds for this trial. And so that's something that could taint the jury pool.
Is there a cutoff limit of where, the court can decide what the impact that publicity is having on a case? Because I think of the jury selection process, and it could be likely that people just don't watch the news and people don't follow true crime, and they've never heard of Virginia Gonzales, and they have no idea what this case is about when they sit down, for jury selection. But then there's also the possibility where you have every single person that is being questioned in the voir dire process and says, yes, I know exactly who that is. Maybe they watch Law and Crime and they've seen this story before. And the judge in that moment says, okay, maybe we have a problem.
Right. And that you brought up the exact timing when that comes up is during voir dire. And so the defense counsel and prosecution is going to ask, has any person here ever seen or heard of the defendant in this case? And then not ask them, have they heard of the investigation, but how do you know her? How have you heard of her? And ask those type of questions. And if that person says, well, yes, I saw her on the news, I saw her on Law and Crime, then the defense counsel or prosecution can say, well, we would like to call this person up for a direct voir dire, where we ask them questions of pretty much, can you put aside whatever views you have seen on public news or anywhere else and only listen to the evidence that's being presented in this particular case? Nothing that you've heard on the news, social media, anywhere else, only in this evidence that you are hearing today. And if they say no, then and only then will they be able to be excused from the jury pool. But if they say yes, I can throw that out of my mind and only listen to what the facts are being presented here today, then that shows that they are not unbiased.
We talk about a lot of really difficult cases, and that's just the reality of true crime. And I remember when police were making the announcement about this case and had said, not only did they, this horrific story of the girl being allegedly found trapped in a closet and that her mom was responsible, according to police. But then it's like, oh, by the way, we have no idea where her daughter is, and we haven't seen her since 2017. And we didn't even know that she had an 8th child. And it's chilling and it's shocking. But then you look at the system, and it's unfortunately not the first time that we've seen cases like this where kids just fall through the cracks. And as someone who works within the criminal justice system, I guess, how common is it that something like this can happen, where there's all these stories being told of oh, they went to go live here, but it's like the school district has no record of any of these kids ever being in school. And then suddenly, once police start peeling back the onion, it's, my gosh, nobody has seen this girl since 2017.
Yeah, what I would say is that every case is a case-by-case basis. Do I see that happen often? I don't know if it happens often, but it does happen. And sometimes CPS, doesn't do an investigation with everyone, or the police department doesn't do an investigation with everyone. And sometimes things do happen. And it is unfortunate. And it is something that once they start looking into it a little more carefully, they decide or figure out, okay, well, this was actually happening in this particular situation. And it's a really unfortunate situation.
No, it really is. And then there's part of this with Child Protective Services where apparently the number and signature on a document back in 2023, according to KXAN, was supposedly the grandmother, but now police say it was a forged signature, it seems, and not a real phone number. And we've seen cases with CPS, and we know that the system is overburdened with a lot of difficult cases. Just in your work and any times you've dealt with CPS, because unfortunately, a lot of times I feel like when we talk about that part of the system. It's in the negative light. But I mean, what's the reality of just how this can happen where even this would be 5 or 6 years after this girl was last seen, the lie is alleged lie, able to continue on that this girl, no, she's with family, everything's good, sign here, and then CPS moves on.
And like we said, that it's very unfortunate. But when we talk about different individuals with CPS or individuals who work in government capacity, sometimes those individuals are overworked. They have a very large docket and they have a lot of people to be concerned about. They have a lot of cases to look into. And so I'm not saying that it's something that, is common to happen, but it is just something that can happen, and in this situation it did happen. And so it just becomes an unfortunate situation. But once it comes to light, it sounds like the police department is on top of it now and doing an investigation into it.
In now moving to the child abuse case that she's facing, this jury trial is slated to begin. We'll see what happens on January 26th. And it seems like there's the case of this young girl found in a closet, according to police. And then you have Ava Gonzales, who hasn't been seen since 2017. And now it seems like police believe that she may have been murdered. Why keep those two separate, where she's heading now to this jury trial, but then at the same time, there's an investigation going on? Why not, since they're both her kids? I mean, what's the strategy typically when it comes to prosecuting someone like this, where you have multiple layers and multiple crimes? I know it's not a double jeopardy because they're separate, but at the same time, it seems like there's more to come no matter what happens with this jury trial, whether or not that starts on the day that it's supposed to, which is the 26th.
Yeah, that's a good point. The charge that she's facing right now, she has been charged with, right? So that's an injury to a child. Injury to a child can range from a state jail felony all the way to a first-degree felony, depending upon the factors of the case and the intent behind the individual and what they're being charged with, that intent. And so here she's being charged with injury to a child. She's not being charged with a murder case. And so it's two separate things, two separate individuals. And so it should be two separate trials. It should be two separate charges altogether. And so no matter what happens in this particular case, she should be brought in charge on a separate case altogether for this other individual. And so it's not something that should run parallel to each other just because, it's such a heinous crime on both ends. She should be charged on both children as the investigation continues to move forward.
And this child abuse case is just terrible. No doubt about that. And being a criminal defense attorney is a really hard job, I'm sure, in these cases, having to defend someone like Virginia Gonzales and what she's accused of, because there's going to be evidence that this child was malnourished. I mean, the science will be there. How does a defense attorney, because I know there are some questions about custody and legally who was the person who was supposed to be looking after, even though she's the mom. I guess, how does a defense attorney effectively, especially when a jury may be horrified with what a prosecutor may say, the injuries that this girl has potentially for life, how at the same time does a defense attorney, an effective strategy in trying to defend your client and saying, hey, this is not her fault, which is what her defense attorney likely is going to do?
Yeah, I think we have to start back a little further. When I was a young lawyer, an older lawyer told me it's your job as defense attorneys to protect the rights of the defendant, to make sure the state is doing their job. And if they don't, then you bring awareness to that. And so the first part is, well, is it that her rights are being actually fulfilled? Is she making sure that her rights are being paid attention to, right? So that's the first part. And if that's the case, the defense attorney brought the first offer or multiple offers to this defendant. She decided that she didn't want to accept that offer, which was 40 years. Then the defendant is the one who makes the decision on moving forward with the trial case. And the counsel then decides, okay, well, I'm going to move forward with that trial case. And if that happens, then we come up with some strategies at that time. It's going to be very difficult trial altogether. Showing those kind of pictures to a jury is going to be an emotional trial. And so that's going to be pictures, testimony, anything that deals with the child, especially pictures that are going to be very graphic, is going to be a very emotional based trial setting.
Yeah, it is. There's no doubt that this is just a horrific case. We'll see how it plays out, whether this jury trial starts on the time it's slated, and what new charges, if any, will come Virginia Gonzales' way. Bridget Williams, trial attorney from Texas. Thank you as always for being with us on Law & Crime. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, Chris. As
it stands right now, Gonzales' jury trial on those child abuse charges is slated for January 26th. That will do it for On the Case, presented by Law & Crime. Subscribe to us on YouTube and Spotify, and now you can find episodes of On the Case on Peacock. I'm Chris Stewart. We'll see you next time.